What's up guys, Cyrus here with Team Dynamic Discs, and I'm bringing you my 2023 in the bag. Alright, starting off with putting putters. I've been rocking the same pair of Classic Blend first run EMAC Judges for gotta be almost 2 years now. I think they came out early 2021. First pair I ever got, still the pair in my bag. The stamp is basically completely worn off, so it's like a ghost stamp kind of now. A lot of love, but they still fly true, feel good, and most importantly go in the basket. I really like throwing putters, so I've got quite the stack of throwing putters here. First up, most understable, is this Classic Hybrid Warden that I've had in my bag for a really long time. It's really warped and beat up, flippy, but it's really nice, feels really good, and flies a really good, true, slow turning line. It's never going to fade, but it doesn't flip very hard. Next up in stability is this Classic Blend EMAC Judge. This was one of my practice putters, but I put it in the bag just as a good replaceable throwing putter, and it's been one of my favorites to use. It's beaten into the point that it's a reliable straight with a little bit of turnover, but I can really throw it hard, and it's not quite as flippy as that Warden, and I use it in a lot of scenarios that maybe I want to hold straight or get a little bit of flip up and trust my putter with. So I've leaned on this putter quite a lot. Next up is this 2019 AJ Risley Hybrid Waffle Warden. This thing has a lot of love, as you can see, lots of nicks, and the stamp's kind of wearing out, but it's still got some stability, mostly just really dead straight. It feels really good in the hand, and it's been in my bag most of this past year. I didn't bag it when I first got it, but I put it in my bag last year for all of last year, and I really like how it feels. I really like how it flies. Hybrid Warden. Next is a new addition to my bag, the Lucid Ice Judge with a little Zach Melton stamp. This thing is one of the newest runs of premium plastic Judges. It's a little flatter on the top, and that Lucid Ice plastic is still a little stiff. Down here in this Arizona heat, it's a little bit gummy, but it's got some good stability to it. Really dependable, straight for a long ways with a nice little gentle fade at the end. So I've really been liking throwing this Judge out here that I just added to my bag before this trip down here to Arizona, and it's really found a nice home in my bag. Now this last putter isn't really a staple in my bag, but funny story, I was playing Vista with my friend Jeff Flanders, and we were on hole 17, the little shorty, and in a grate he fished this out, and it's a prime agent I think, with this Ricky stamp, and I was like, oh cool. And I just messaged Ricky earlier that day, so I sent him a picture of this, and he was like, that's actually my disc. I must have left it at Vista, but you can have it, enjoy. And so, I mean, what are the odds that I found one of Ricky's discs? For that reason alone, I had to put it in my bag this week just to give it a toss, see how it flies. It's got a big gash out of it, I suppose, from whoever picked it up and threw it into that culvert that we found it in, but still a really funny story behind it, and I've been trying to get an ace all week with it. Gotten close, but not quite. Last up with the kind of putter type discs is this Alex Bush Light BT Hard Harp. This thing has been in my bag a long time. I threw it in the middle of the ice this winter, got back to me. It's beat up every which way. It's basically straight now, but I use it a lot for shaping forehand shots. I really like to throw those short approaches with this, backhand or forehand. Feels really good in the hand. Love the stamp from Alex Bush, fellow teammate. And yeah, really good for those shaping forehand, backhand approaches. Really, backhand is just pretty straight. Forehand, any angle you put it on, it holds. So, BT Hard Harp. Alright, moving on to mid-ranges. I've only got 4 in the bag right now because I just lost one this trip, but I'm pretty simple when it comes to my mids. First off is the old Jesper Fuse. These things are money. I'm sure you've heard plenty of players talk about them. This one's been in my bag for a really long time. It's the color of grass, which is not inconvenient, or which is not convenient actually. I ran over it with a lawnmower a couple years ago. I've thrown it into so many woods. I've thrown it so many places that I shouldn't ever find it, and yet somehow, even though it's see-through green, it comes back to me. I left it at a course overnight, and somehow it got back to me. It's just, I guess we're meant to be, and the stamp's pretty much all the way off it. It's still held its shape really well. It feels great in the hand, this old optoplastic. Nothing flies like an old Jesper fuse, so this is definitely one of my favorite discs that I've ever thrown, let alone that's in my bag. Next up, the Royal Grand Trust. This thing is the mid I've always been looking for. It's dependable, straight. You can rip all you want into it. It's not going to flip over, and it'll have that little fade back when they're new. This one has been in my bag for a while. Got ran over by a car earlier this week. Still held its shape really well, and it still flies that straight line. I can rip into it and know it won't flip. I had another one that was white that I just put in my bag that I got lost this week in a baseball field that was locked, and I couldn't get into it, so rip in the chat for that one. But this truss has been in my bag much longer, and I really love the truss, so don't see this leaving my bag anytime soon. Really good feel in the hand, and it's that great, dependable overall mid-range. Next in the bag is the trusty Chris Clemens Lucid X Glimmer Verdict. This is the run from a few years ago that's board flat, really nice and overstable, good backhand, forehand, whatever you need. I can depend on this thing to dive hard but have a little bit of glide as well. It's really usable and dependable, feels really good in the hand, and I really like this run a lot. And lastly is this VIPX Chameleon. Yes, VIPX Chameleon Moonshine Anvil, that's what it is. This thing, the stamp's wearing off, it's all nicked up. It's probably the most beat up I've ever seen a Lucid X disc. It's been in my bag for a couple years now, but it's still really overstable. I love how it feels backhand, forehand. It's that beadless justice that people always talk about, and it flies really good, dependable, dumpy line for anything. Approaches off the tee, hyzers, flex shots. The Anvil really does it all. Moving on to fairway drivers. We'll start off with the Maverick. I've only got one Maverick in the bag right now. This is a Lucid X from the first wave of 2020 that's been in my bag for a really long time. I said that Anvil was my most beat up Lucid X disc, but this one's really up there because this thing is flippy now, like a normal Lucid Maverick. Stamp's wearing off, but it feels really good in the hand. This was a transitional from white to blue, so it's that really cool light blue color, and it feels good in the hand. It's gotten really beat up, but I use this for a lot of wood shots, hyzer flips, flat to turns, when I need that long glide, flip up in the woods, but that control of the Maverick. So if you're looking for a great disc for basically any arm speed to shape shots with, the Maverick is your go-to. And with this lefty guy's name on it, it can help you shape those left to right moving shots that can be difficult if you're right-handed. Moving on to one of my favorite discs that I've had in my bag these past couple years. This is a Goldline Burst United States Amateur Match Play Explorer from, I think, 2019. This has been in my bag for a couple years. It's got gashes, it's got nicks, it's got this like rim of scuff somehow along it, but its shape is still there and its flight is still there. It's a little flippier now, obviously, but when I throw this thing hard and flat, it is a rope. It's like this fuse, but a fairway driver with a little more stability. I threw this all over the place in Emporia for Junior Worlds. I throw it in so many different courses. I haven't hit an ace with it, but I've spit out a couple times. It's one of my most trustworthy discs in my bag because I really know how this thing flies. So I used to have a backup for it of the same exact run. I lost that, not this, but I currently have none of this run as a backup, so hopefully I don't lose this. Really gonna try not to do that. Next up are the getaways. I have 3 getaways in my bag right now. They're all fusion burst. I love the getaway so much. Starting off with the most understable, this is a factory blank fusion burst getaway that I got on Facebook a couple years ago. It's really, really flat for getaways. It feels really good in the hand, and it's pretty beat up now, so I can throw this on hyzer and it'll flip up and turn a little bit. If I throw it flat, it's got a good long turn. This is my furthest flying getaway for sure. I use this a lot when I need to shape a shot in the woods, but the Maverick might not go as far, or I don't want to quite throw a driver, but I need to get some distance. This thing has a lot of glide. I'm really confident with this getaway. Next up in stability is this Team Stamp Fusion Burst getaway. Who did I get this from? I believe I got this from Jared Neal. I'm not sure. So I got this from another team player. Thank you so much for that. This thing, it's got scuffs all over it. It's beat up, well loved. This thing's definitely more overstable than that one. Thrown flat and hard, it's got a good little turn and still a good fade. This thing's been in my bag for less time, and it's got a little more dome originally in the molding, so it was more overstable to start with. This thing I can really lean on for like big hyzers. It'll flip up a little bit, but it'll always fade, and flat I know it'll turn and fade a good amount. So good step up in the getaways. And then lastly, I just added this to the bag. This was a basically brand new Fusion Burst getaway. It's quite nicked up now, not too bad, but I've been throwing it all week here in the desert, spiking in on rocks and stuff. But this thing is holding stability well, flat, a little turn, a good gentle fade. But the thing about the getaway is it just goes so far for being just a fairway driver. So this thing, good sweeping hyzers, flex shots, I know it will never turn all the way over, so really versatile fairway driver. So the getaway has been a favorite mold of mine for a long time. I've got one of those Mason Ford Orbit ones that I've only thrown in the winter. That was pretty overstable. I can't wait to throw that in the summer, see how it complements my getaway lineup. But yeah, let's move on to felons now. Alright, I've also got 3 felons in my bag right now. Starting with the first, this is this yellow one. This is a prototype first run felon with the double D stamp. This one I actually bought used, already quite beat up on Facebook, and I've only just beat it up more. This is my felon that I use to shape shots with. If you've thrown a prototype felon, you know how good they are. Really good feel in the hand, really good longevity in terms of flight. The plastic is really durable, so even though there's nicks all over it, it really flies well. This one I use a lot for forehands because I don't have the best forehand by any means, so I can still get this thing to fly some good forehand lines. Backhand, I use this if I need to throw like a good spike hyzer, but I need it to go farther than my more overstable felons, but not quite as far as a getaway would. So it can glide just that little extra distance, or I'll use it on some flat shots that I throw flat and they'll really push forward before they fade. But whereas the getaway might turn, I know that I can count on this thing to push forward and not turn before it fades. So prototype felon, must have in the bag. Next up is the Orbit Felon. This is the first run that they made for Ricky back when he was newly signed last year. The signature is one that when he was signing him in store, that's where it came from. This is one of the blue ones, and this is the second one I had actually, but it's been in my bag for a good amount of time. The stamp's starting to come off, so this thing's beating up a little bit. It's still more overstable than that prototype Felon, but it's got a good fade to it at the end. So I'll use this for forehands that are a little more overstable than that, or I'll use this for mostly a lot of backhand hyzer shots is what I feel most comfortable with this. To varying degrees of hyzer depending on how high or how far I want it to go, but I can really depend on this thing to be a dependable hyzer but not be too dumpy. Last but not least, I've got this pretty new Lucid Ice Felon from the Cedar Creek Open last year, I believe. Yeah, just last year. Shout out to Trevor. That's one of my favorite tournaments in Minnesota. This is a Lucid Ice Felon, so one of the newest blends of Lucid. You can see it's really clear. It's got a really, really good shape to it. Not like really board flat, but not domey by any means. Got that just really good overstable 9-speed shape to it. This thing's my most overstable Felon. Like I said, I just put it in the bag. Down here in the heat, like that Judge, it's got a good little flex to it, but nothing too big at all. And yeah, it's really premium blend of Lucid plastic, and this thing is good and overstable. I can throw it for backhand hard flexes that'll come back. I've thrown it a lot for those spike hyzers. It's not like a Lucid X Felon by any means. Those old Glimmer ones are really, really overstable. But this one is very dependable. I can throw it in any type of wind, and I've been using it a lot out here. And even though it's been spiking into rocks all week, you can barely tell. This Lucid Ice holds up really well. So check out the Lucid Ice Felon. Moving on to, one more. I have one more fairway driver that I forgot about. How could I? This is a hybrid Vandal with a hand-eye supply stamp. I love the Vandal for rollers and tight hyzer flips so much. This is a really, really fun disc. It's got a really good shape to it. It's pretty symmetrical on the top and bottom of the edge here, so that makes it a really ideal roller disc. And it's not the flippiest disc in the world. So if I get it down on some good anhyzer, I know that it'll roll for a long ways straight before curling over. So I like a roller like that. I don't necessarily like to have the really flippy disc that you throw flat and it flips completely over. That's harder to control for me. So I also like to use this on really tight woods holes. It's easier for me to commit on hyzer, so I can just pop this thing on a good 45 degrees of hyzer, and I can trust it to ride up and glide really, really far. So or big sky annies. This thing can really do it all. The Vandal is a great disc for any arm speed, so if you're looking for that 9-speed understable, definitely check out the Vandal. Now moving on to distance drivers. The first one is the Grace. The Kristen Tatar Grace has swept the world, the disc golf world, these past couple of years. This is one of the runs that came out sometime last year. I can't quite remember. It's got a good little rise in the middle, so this thing is pretty overstable, but it was pretty overstable, but I've beaten it in a lot, so this thing is really flippy. It's my flippiest distance driver, maybe the flippiest disc in my bag, so I throw this if I ever throw rollers with distance drivers. I usually don't, but I'd use this if I did. I also use this for hyzer flip distance shots or flat big turning anhyzers. So the Grace is a really, really good disc for a lot of different arm speeds. It's that really nice 11 speed, feels great in a lot of different sized hands. And yeah, if you're kind of struggling to get max distance with faster distance drivers, the Grace is a disc you should check out. Really, really good disc. Next up, we've got the Raider. I actually only have 2 in the bag right now. That changes a lot. First is this blue Fusion that I've had in my bag for quite a while. Shout out to Chris Telesbo. I traded him for this a couple years back. This is one of the flatter ones, and it's also pretty see-through. It's really gummy in the hand, and it's pretty flippy by now. The stamp's kind of wearing off, but for whatever reason, I've had other runs of Raiders that are flippier out of the box. So even though this thing's beat up, it's actually still more overstable than some of those other Raiders. So this is pretty much my max distance disc right now. It does that really nice, just long turn, fade out at the end. It's not going to burn over, and hyzer flips up and a little fade. So yeah, Raider. Next is this Fusion Raider, which I just got at Dynamic Disc Phoenix a couple days ago. This is one of the newer runs that have that pop top and this cool little mark on it. I actually hit the underside of a power line the other day, and it skipped off the bottom of it and made this gnarly mark thing with it. So yeah, it gives it some character. But this thing was fairly straight to overstable out of the box, but threw it over a fence at Vista into a dumpster. I hit quite a lot of rocks with it, but it's pretty much turning into a backup for this at this point. It's been my water disc out here so far. I just ordered a couple more of this run last night, so this is a really good, the current run of Fusion Raider is really good bomber out of the box. Got that good glide pop top, really good feel in the hand, a little stiffer than the older Fusion. So yeah, stock Fusion Raiders are the place to be, or the disc to have, or whatever. Next, I've got this one Grand Rive, just a stock stamp. This thing started out actually pretty overstable, more overstable than the other Rives I had, I guess. Some of them came out a little domier. This one's not very domey. It's pretty flat. I put this in my bag originally just because I had a bunch of them, and I think it was a water disc when I was in Peoria last year for Junior Worlds, but it's stayed in my bag since, and I've really come to rely on it for a step above these Raiders. I can throw it flat and hard and know it'll push straight, maybe just a little bit of turn and fade at the end. This thing I'm using for a lot of those dependable distance, but you don't want it to flip and you need that fade at the end, but it still goes a good while. So I can also, with just a bit of anhyzer, get this thing to fly really far. This is what I'll throw if there's a bit of a headwind and I need distance. So the Rive really complements the Raider well for that step up in stability. And lastly, the Enforcer. I have 3 Enforcers in my bag. I love the Enforcer so much. So, first off, this has been my baby for a couple years. I got this from Robert McCall when he was leaving Dynamic Discs. This is just a pretty old Fusion Raider with the double D's stamp. Got some cool little blue swirls in the white disc. Originally, this was a water disc, if I'm being honest. I threw it at one hole at the valley over the water, if anyone knows, hole 11. But I threw that hole so well, so many times with this, that I've really come to like it. It's been in my bag a couple of years. It's beaten into just a really, really good bomber. It's a lot like this blue Raider, but for whatever reason, the Enforcer's got that a little smaller rim, so it's more controllable for me. Doesn't maybe quite go as far, but it's kind of between these two. It's just kind of what I'm feeling that day. More often than not, it's this thing, but obviously, since I love it so much, it doesn't take on many risk holes when there's water around. Not throwing this thing, obviously. So, but this thing, I know it like the back of my hand, just like that Explorer. So really, really love this Enforcer. Next up is one of the old greeny runs of Enforcer. This is obviously not green, but it's that same era. Older than that run. It's got that little circle in the middle. I got this out of a used bin. Pretty flat. If you know those old runs, they beat in to be bombers. This thing hasn't quite gotten there yet. Even though it was out of a used bin, it's still relatively new. I've put some good work on it, but for right now, it's just my kind of step up from that Rive whenever I'm throwing hyzers. A little more stability. I also, since I got it from a used bin, don't care about it as much, so I use this on a lot of water hyzers. I can really trust it in wind for it to go far and fade a lot. And lastly is this new Orbit Enforcer from Gavin Rathbun. This thing has a sick flat pink stamp, and the orbit effect on this is just absolutely insane. I just got this, put it in my bag to test out this week. It's good and not too overstable. It's got a lot of glide for an Enforcer, but it's still got that meat at the end. It's pretty comparable to this one right now. I've got it in the bag for testing right now, so I'm really excited to test it more next summer once the snow melts in Minnesota. But yeah, really, really good disc here from Gavin. And gotta love the Enforcer. I like it more than the Defender for me because it's got a little smaller rim, but it's a little deeper. Really can get my hands around it, and it's got that great dependable finish. So the Enforcer, it's also a really ideal speed, that 12 speed, not too fast. So yeah, the Enforcer is a really good disc. I've loved it for a lot of years, and I can't wait to keep throwing them. So that was my in the bag. As far as bags go, I've got this really sweet Combat Ranger over here. Fits this mountain of discs as you saw. I had the side loaded up, top loaded up, all the compartment loaded up. Fits everything you could ask for. Pockets. I've actually got a review of the Combat Ranger on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out if you want. Pockets all over the place. Yeah, this, and even pocket up top if you want to hold stuff up there. Towels on the side. Anything you could ask for in a bag, this has got it. Plus this pattern. I mean, how can you not be a fan of this pattern, am I right? So, thank you guys for watching my in the bag. Like I said, I'm here in California, not California. Like I said, I'm here in Arizona for the next couple of days. I've been here for over a week. It's really been great to get out of that Minnesota winter. Still got a couple more months of snow. Starting my second semester of college here in a week, so I'm really excited to be going to college nationals this spring with the University of Minnesota, as well as playing a bunch of tournaments this summer. And yeah, it's going to be really fun. Thank you guys so much for checking out my in the bag. Check out dynamicdiscs.com. Thank you so much to them for supporting me, and we'll see you out there. If you like this video, make sure to click over there, subscribe, leave a like down below, drop a comment what you think of my bag. And yeah, hope everyone has a great new year, and be dynamic.